Hello all, welcome to this session of Management Principles and Applications. Today we are going to discuss some more management theories, namely management by objectives, reengineering in terms of business process reengineering, and Porter's 5 forces model about competition. Let us come to management by objectives, which is also known as MBO. Management by objectives, it is a strategic approach. So it is full of strategies to enhance the performance of an organization. We all want that the organizations should work efficiently. And for that, we have to make certain strategies which would accomplish our goals. And that is what management by objectives is all about. It is a process where the goals of the organization are defined and conveyed by the management to the members of the organization with the intention to achieve each objective. So, the management should be very clear with the goals. They clearly define and convey these goals to the members of the organizations who will carry out all the functions with the intention to achieve each objective. So, it would be able to, if we go by those strategies, we would be able to accomplish our goals. The key takeaways in management by objectives. So it is an approach adopted by managers to control their employees by implementing a series of concrete goals, that is the clear goals, that both the employee and the organization aim to accomplish in the immediate future and work accordingly to achieve. So the first part is that the managers are going to adopt this approach so that they can implement certain actions to achieve some concrete goals. Also, MBO approach is implemented to ensure that the employees get a clear understanding of their goals. So if you are told or communicated about the goal which you have to achieve and your roles and responsibilities, then only you can work better, because you would know what all comes in your periphery and what all is expected out of you. Hence, along with the expectations, it is being told to the employee so that he can understand the relation of the activities to the overall success of the organization. So the employee would know how important it is, or how important is his role in conjugation with the overall objective of the organization. If the management by objective strategy is not adequately set, decided, and controlled by the organizations, self-centered workers can be likely to misinterpret the results, wrongly portraying the achievement of short-term narrow-minded goals. So if the roles, responsibilities are not very clear, people may adopt laissez-faire, that is free run environment. They would do whatever suits them rather than the organization's objectives. Now, steps in management by objectives. So what is the process? Define organization goals. As I've told you, goals are so very important, and an organization has to be really clear with what kind of goals do they set to achieve the objective of the firm, to achieve the mission and accomplish the vision of the organization. So setting objectives is not only critical to the success of any company, but it also serves a variety of purposes. It needs to include several different types of managers in goal setting. The objectives set by the supervisors are provisional, based on interpretation and evaluation of what the company can and should achieve within a specified time. The second is define employee objectives. So first you have set the organizational goals, then you will break these goals into individual goals. Once the employees are briefed about general objectives, plan, and the strategies to follow, the managers can start working with their subordinates on establishing their personal objectives. This will be a one-on-one discussion where the subordinates will let the managers know about their targets and which goals they can accomplish within a specific time and with what kind of resources. So they can then share some tentative thoughts about which goals the organization or department can find feasible. Hence, it is broken down into the employee goals or the individual goals. Then, once the goals are set, you need to have continuous monitoring performance and progress. So, though the management by objectives approach is necessary for increasing the effectiveness of the managers, but it is equally essential for monitoring the performance and progress of each employee in the organization. So, if you will not monitor, you might not get the desired results. Then, performance evaluation. It comes under the MBO framework. The performance review is achieved by the participation of managers concerned. Then, providing feedback. In the management by objectives approach, the most essential step is the continuous feedback on the results and objectives, as it enables the employees to track and make corrections to their actions. Then we come to performance appraisal. So the performance reviews are a routine review of the success of employees within the MBO organizations. So you will set goals, you will break the goals into individual goals, then you will continuously monitor them, then you will evaluate the performance of the managers, then you will give feedback, and then there come the performance appraisal, final performance appraisal, or the routine reviews within the MBO organizations. Advantages of management by objectives. Actually, if you see, we can actually go with an example first here. For instance, those in digital or online marketing. So, you know how an MBO organization will work in such an environment. So, what are they tasked with? The digital or online marketing guys are tasked with something along the lines of increasing site traffic, conversions, etc. So, a broader organization goal in this regard could be something like increase brand authority and become an industry influencer. Now, the MBO goal may look like, let us say, Rahul Goyal. So, quarter 3, 2020 target maybe 1,50,000 rupees. Goal to publish 30 blogs that demonstrate your authority status as industry leader. Or let us say brainstorm list of 50 blog topics, or schedule 30 blog topics, or publish 15 blogs, or publish some of the papers or articles. So all this can come in the marketing, online marketing arena. Now with this example, we can come forward for discussing advantages of management. So obviously it leads to better planning, better organization. You will have self-control because you know your responsibilities and authority well, so you can self-control yourself. With the better planning and organizing, there would be higher productivity, better appraisal because there is a continuous appraisal, executive development because you are being very self-centered, you're being self-controlled. So there is a lot of scope of development of people in this. With the development of people, there would be development in the managing tasks as well. So the managers will also grow. Obviously, there is clarity of organizational roles and structures because you have told them organization objectives are these are broken into these. So your individual goal is this, your subordinates goals are these. So everybody knows the chain, and hence there is clarity. Encouragement of personal commitment. So once you are given that freedom to know your importance as well as to take your decisions, so personal commitment also increases. Development of effective controls and facilitating coordination of efforts. So all these things comes with management by objectives. Now what are the disadvantages? Now, the first problem is joint objective setting among unequals. Now, if you show this chart, somebody has been given some work, the other person has given less significant work, he might feel less significant, but maybe you wanted to bring this guy up so that he can explore his talent. That's why a manager has done that, but people might feel dissatisfied. Problems of MBO being effective at the lowest level. So when these are broken down, there are people like in theory X who would not like to know what is going on in the organization. They are so unskilled that they just want to do their work. So they do not or cannot relate themselves with MBO. Then it is difficult to implement in a situation of change. Whenever things are changing rapidly, you cannot always keep on telling every small and single thing to every employee, and hence in the environment of change, MBO becomes difficult. Resistance to adopt MBO techniques. Now MBO techniques are challenging techniques, and because it is a change technique, there might be resistances. Poor planning. In case there is poor planning, the MBO falls out. Lack of training. You need to train people in order to deliver the kind of objectives you are expecting them to. Limited application. Yes, it has got very limited application in the industries where the ultimate objective is only goal achievement. There can be other non-quantifiable goals as well, and because of this huge structure in the goal setting process, it becomes a little inflexible. And because it is expensive in terms of time as well as money, that all the decisions would flow down, would be understood, and hence it becomes expensive process. Inadequate commitment from top management. Once the goals are set, the management might think that it has gone on an automated process, and they may not take the organization's goal seriously after that. Goal setters not given any orientation. So the goal setters should also be considered while seeing, because the orientation would be very different in case of a manager or a senior manager, but it is the CEO and CFO who also have to be oriented towards it. Setting goals is a complex process. Yes, we have seen that there is a chain, so you have to be really apt, and you cannot afford to do mistakes in case of setting of goals. Emphasis on short term goals. People would try and do their work because they now know the significance of it, and they might overlook the overall objective. Problem of status and authority. This I have explained, that unequals, then there can be certain status or authority issues that meant that can rise. Limited time horizon. So there can be limited time horizon in the sense that the objective can be true only for 6 months or a year, and then you have to repeat the process again, which is an expensive process. So all these are disadvantages of management by objectives, but because of these disadvantages, we do not retire MBO. It is a very promising strategic process. We can actually develop it and grow it. How can we do it? Suggestions for improvement of MBO. Organizational commitment. So we should work on the organizational commitment of our employees. We should train them well. We should have adequate time and resources for implications of MBO. And we have to take a timely feedback. This is important because then if you take timely feedback, you can act and react and get your organization's goals effectively achieved. So planned objectives are necessary for companies to operate successfully, but this depends upon the individual performance of managers and their staff. Management by objectives provides a system which identifies the objectives and contribution of individuals with the overall company objectives and performance. Now, to be successful, MBO programs should include commitment, participation at all levels from top management to the lowest position. If we take care of all this, MBO can be very promising. Is reengineering. Now, what is business process reengineering? It is the act of recreating a core business process with the goal of improving product output, quality, or reducing costs. Typically, it involves the analysis of company workflows, finding processes that are subpar or inefficient, and figuring out ways to get rid of them or change them all. So it is, you are doing or producing in a way which of late with time has become obsolete. So you have to re-engineer that machine. In the same way, there are business processes, so there is a workflow that is there. So but they also get obsolete because new technologies keep on coming. So if there are softwares for, let us say, uh, getting the attendance of the people, then you should actually adopt that rather than the physical signatures of the employees. Business process reengineering, the processes, the steps. What are the steps of business process engineering? The first step is identify and communicating the need for change. Now, if you're a small startup, this can be a piece of cake. You realize that your product has a high user drop off rate. Send off a text to your co founder and suggest a direction in that sense. For a corporate, it can be a lot harder. How? There will always be individuals who are happy with things as they are, both from the side of management and employees. The first might be afraid that it might be a sunk investment, the later for their job security. So, you will need to convince them why making the change is essential for the company. If the company is not doing well, this shouldn't be too hard. In some cases, however, the issue is with the company not doing as well as it could be, meaning you should do your research. Which processes might not be working? Is your competition doing better than you in some way? Once you have all this information, you will need to come up with a very comprehensive plan involving leaders from different departments. The management will have to play the role of salespeople, conveying the grand vision of this change and showing how it will affect even the lowest ranked employees positively. So, this is how you identify and communicate the need for change. The step 2 is put together a team of experts. Now, what is that? So, as with any other project, business process reengineering needs a team of highly skilled, motivated people who will carry out the needed steps. In most cases, the team will consist of senior manager, operational manager, re-engineering experts, and they will work for your team. Now, there are a lot of different ways in which you can actually do this to find out what goes fine with you. The third is find the inefficient processes and define key performance indicators. Now, once you have the team ready and about to kick off your initiative, you will need to define the right key performance indicators. So you don't want to adapt to a new process and then realize that you didn't keep some expenses in mind. The idea of business process reengineering is to optimize. So while KPIs usually vary depending on what process you are optimizing, the things can be a little typical. Like, for example, in manufacturing, so cycle time, the time, what is the cycle time? The time spent from beginning to end of the process. Or in manufacturing, it is changeover time. So what is that? Time needed to switch the line from making one product to the other. Then defect rate, percentage of products manufactured defective. Then inventory turnover, like I told you that how much time it takes for the inventory in the production process. So all these things, all you have to find out what are your key performance indicators, and then you will need to go after the individual process. The easiest way to do is to do business process mapping. While it can be hard to analyze process as a concept, it is a lot easier if you have everything written down step by step. This is where the operational manager comes in handy. They make it marginally easier to define and analyze the processes. So what you can do is you can process flow charts, and there are business process management software as well, like Talify, and there are many. So now we come to the next step, and that is re-engineer the process and compare key performance indicators. So finally, once you're done with all the analysis and planning, you can start implementing the solutions and changes on a small scale. Once you get to this point, there is not much to add. What you have to do now is to keep putting your theories into practice and see how the KPIs hold up. If the key performance indicators show that the new solution works better, you can start slowly scaling the solution, putting it into action within more and more company processes. So if not, you go back to the drawing board and start chalking up the new potential solutions again. So this was about all the steps of business process. Now there's this example in Ford Motors. Ford Motors is one of the most referenced business process re-engineering examples. It is an automobile manufacturing company. In 1980s, the American automobile industry was in depression, and in an attempt to cut costs, Ford decided to scrutinize some of their departments in an attempt to find inefficient processes. One of their findings was that the accounts payable department was not as efficient as it could be. So their accounts payable division consisted of 500 people, as opposed to their competition, they had only 5. So while Mazda was a smaller company, Ford estimated that their department was still 5 times bigger than it should have been. Accordingly, Ford management set themselves a quantifiable goal to reduce the number of clerks working in accounts payable by a couple of hundred employees. Then they launched a business process re-engineering initiative to figure out why was the department so overstaffed. And they came up with a software and they implemented it and they cut many a costs in the process. Now we come to Porter's 5 forces model. What is this 5 forces model? It is a framework for analyzing a company's competitive environment. The number and power of companies' competitive rivals, potential new market entrants, suppliers, customers, and substitute products influence a company's profitability. So, what are these things which influence the company's profitability? Let us see. This is Porter's 5 forces model. As I have told you that Porter's 5 forces analysis, it is a framework that helps analyzing the level of competition within a certain industry. So the first force here is threat of new entrants. New entrants in an industry brings new capacity and the desire to gain market share. The seriousness of the threat depends on the barriers to enter a certain industry. The higher these barriers to entry, the smaller the threat for existing players. Now, what can be the examples of barriers to entry? Need for economies of scale, brand loyalty, capital requirements, cumulative experiences, government policies, access to distribution channels, and switching costs. We can take an example of, let's say, airline industry. It takes quite some investments to start an airline company, right? So there is this barrier to entry. Moreover, new entrants need licenses, insurances, distribution channels, and other qualifications that are not easy to obtain when you are new in the industry. Also, it can be expected that existing players have built up a large base of experience over the years to cut costs and increase service level. A new entrant is likely not to have this kind of expertise, therefore, creating a competitive disadvantage right from the start. But due to the liberalization of market access and the availability of leasing options, external finances from banks, investors, and aircraft manufacturers, new doors are opening up for potential entrants. Even though it doesn't sound very attractive for companies to enter the airline industry, but it is not impossible. So we have seen Indigo, Kingfisher, though it has failed now. So there has been low cost companies which have entered into airline arena. Then we come to bargaining power of suppliers. This force analyzes how much power and control a company's suppliers has over the potential to raise its prices or to reduce the quality of purchased goods and services. which in turn will lower an industry's profitability potential. The concentration of suppliers and the availability of substitute suppliers are important factors in determining supply power. The fewer there are, the more power they have. Businesses are in a better position when there are multitude of suppliers. Now, for example, the bargaining power of suppliers in airline industry can be considered very high. So why? Because when looking at the major inputs airline company needs, we see that they are especially dependent on fuel and aircrafts. These inputs, however, very much affected by the external environment. The price of aviation fuel is subject to fluctuations in global market for oil, which can change widely because of geopolitical and other factors. In terms of aircrafts, only two major suppliers exist, Boeing and Airbus. Now we come to bargaining power of buyers. The bargaining power of buyers is also described as market of outputs. This force analyzes to what extent the customers are able to put the company under pressure, which also affects the customer's sensitivity to price changes. The customers have a lot of power when there aren't many of them, and when the customers have many alternatives to buy from. Moreover, it should be easy for them to switch from one company to another. Buying power is low, however, when customers purchase products in small amounts and they act independently, and when the seller's product is very different from any of its competitors. Example, we can take as the bargaining power of buyers in our airline industry is very high. Customers are able to check prices of different airline companies fast through the many online price comparison websites, Expedia, Make My Trip. Customers nowadays are likely to fly with different carriers to and from their destination if that would lower their costs. So brand loyalty therefore doesn't seem to be that high. Some airline companies are trying to change this with frequent flyer programs aimed at rewarding the customers that come back to them from time to time. Then we come to threat of substitute products. The existence of products outside the common product boundaries increases the propensity of customers to switch to alternatives. In order to discover these alternatives, one should look beyond similar products that are branded differently by competitors. Instead, every product that serves a similar need for customers should be taken into account. For example, energy drink like Red Bull. It is not considered a competitor for coffee brands such as Nestle, Brew, or Starbucks. But if because both coffee and energy drink fulfill the similar need, the customers might be willing to switch from one to another if they feel that prices increases too much in either coffee or energy drink. This will ultimately affect an industry's profitability and should therefore also be taken into account when evaluating the industry's attractiveness. Let us apply it to our airline example, and we say that the general need of its customers is to travel. It may be clear that there are many alternatives for traveling besides going by plane. Depending on the urgency and distance, customers can opt for train or go by the car, especially within India or in Asia also. More and more people make use of trains. And there are high-speed trains such as bullet trains, and also the airline industry may get some serious future competition from Elon Musk's Hyperloop concept, in which passengers will be traveling in capsules through a vacuum tube, reaching speed limit to maybe approximately 1200 kilometer per hour. So the threat of substitutes in the airline industry can be considered from medium to high. Then the last force, rivalry among existing competitors. So this examines how intense the current competition in the marketplace is, which is determined by number of existing competitors and what each competitor is capable of doing. Rivalry is high when there are a lot of competitors that are roughly equal in size and power, when the industry is growing slowly, and when consumers can easily switch to competitors offering for little cost. So, a good indicator of competitive rivalry can be the concentration ratio of an industry. The lower the ratio, the more intense rivalry is there. So when rivalry is high, competitors are likely to actively engage in advertising, price wars, which can hurt a business bottom line. we bring the example of airline industry. So we see that this industry is extremely competitive because of number of reasons, like entry of low cost careers, tight regulation of industry, and high fixed costs, high barriers to exit, and the fact that industry is very stagnant in terms of growth. The switching costs from customers are also very low, and many players in the industry are similar in size, which leads to fierce competition between the firms. So, taken all together, it can be said that rivalry among existing competitors in the airline industry is high. So, we have seen through example that all these five forces, how they affect a company's competitive environment or organization. Criticism of five forces model. Too general. A key drawback of five forces model is that it simply provides a list of factors that can be advantageous or disadvantageous. Similar to other analytical frameworks such as SWOT analysis, we have strength, weakness, opportunities, and threat analysis model. This tool only serves as a starting point for a deeper investigation. Then second is predisposition to subjective results. Susceptibility to subjectivity is another problem with five forces model. The framework promotes the identification of qualitative data. For untrained individuals, sources of these qualitative data might be based merely on anecdotes, hearsays, or superficial observations. Lack of quantitative dimensions. It takes note of the quantitative analysis. However, it does not have a built-in mechanism on how to do so. In addition, it does not have any guideline for ranking factor or external factors in terms of importance, that how important one factor is to the other. Susceptibility to biased results. In consideration of subjectivity, it is also important to highlight the fact that bias can affect the integrity of the analysis. Regardless of whether the bias is intentional or unintentional, lack of proper training in research and analysis, as well as absence of proper evaluation, can produce results that are too short-sighted. It is unsuitable for complex firms. So it is almost impossible to apply generally to organizations with a large portfolio. The framework is more suitable for a firm operating in a single industry or a market, because the more products are there in product line of a company, the varied kinds of suppliers, retailers, and their competitions thereon would be there, and it would be very difficult to make a graph out of it. Inapplicable non-profit organization. So this framework is also, it applies to only profit-oriented organizations. It cannot be applied to non-profit organizations because the framework centers on identifying competitors and rivals in the market, threats from the product substitutes, as well as threat or risk from suppliers and consumers. So it is a one-dimensional framework. The tool also disregards collusion. So there can be cartels, or the suppliers or competitors or buyers, they may collide with each other. There can be strategic alliances as well. And the competition environment becomes very dynamic. These limitations of five forces model stem from the fact that it is a simple and one-dimensional framework that disregards complexities. So this was about Porter's five forces model. With this, we are done with our management theories. Thank you very much.